Coney Island in the Caribbean. I had a really good childhood growing up. I went to religious schools all my life and I met a really nice guy. His sister played cricket on the cricket team with me, and so at the age of 15 I thought I fell in love, and that relationship lasted throughout my teenage years, throughout my 20s. When I left school, I got a job in one of the best companies in the world, in a big 4 firm. I took that route because it was probably the safest route to take, and I was always one to stay on the straight and narrow, always following the rules, always trying to keep my parents happy, and actually always trying to keep everyone happy. I was not passionate about that job, but I took it because it was the safest route. And it was with a really good company, and I wanted to make everyone happy. When I was about 24, an opportunity came along for me to travel for a year. I decided to take that opportunity and come to the UK for a year. Not everyone was happy with my decision, but I thought for once I'm going to do this for me. I came to the UK, and within three months of me being in the UK, I found out that my partner at the time had found someone else. And that was so heartbreaking to me because, as I said, I met him at 15. I thought he was at that time I thought I couldn't do anything without him. He was my strength at that time.
So I was born in Suriname, and Suriname is in between British and French Guyana in South America. And I was in a Catholic school, and pretty much, yeah, what happened, I think I had a very, very protected childhood. When I was 12, I moved to Holland because there was some kind of revolution happening in Suriname. People were being killed and things like that, so my parents were really disturbed by the fact that, you know, there were several countries in South America, like Cuba, where military would take over the government, and so they felt it was too unsafe for me and my brother to be in Suriname, so they flew us over to Holland. Being a tax lawyer was one of the quickest ways to get a really good paying job. There were not enough tax lawyers, and I was really good in finance, so I thought, well, let's do something that's easy. But I was never passionate about my studies. I was really, you know, just really doing whatever I could to basically get the knowledge in my head, but I was never really passionate about it. So it was a real struggle for me to actually work as a tax lawyer. And so by the time that I had been working as a tax lawyer for 4.5 years, I was almost depressed. I would say that I think I was like 28, and I had an amazing house, I had a car. My house was so amazing, you know, people would come into the house and they would say, my gosh, what don't you have? And I said, happiness.
Basically, my mum brought me up, my parents were divorced, and we lived in High Street, Kent in London, then we lived in Spain for 3 years when I was 9 years old. And that was a great lifestyle for a kid because it was all motorbikes, and swimming pools and ice cream. And I know I certainly tried my mum. I had a bit of a difficult time. My mum and I didn't always see eye to eye, and she was going through quite a few kind of emotional problems, you know, shall we say. Yeah, I was just naughty and a bit rebellious when I was a teenager, yeah. But I had a good time, I enjoyed it, so. And I spent all my time at school, A, kind of chasing boys, and B, running off down the woods for cigarettes with friends. So yeah, I didn't pay too much attention to my academic studies at school. I suppose 95, so this is, you know, fast forward a few years. 95, I'd had a really good year, and I worked in TV, and I'd been a bit of a party girl since 1990, and I was out clubbing every night, doing loads of drugs, and, you know, having a really good time. And I suddenly kind of just went, you know, I went a bit too high, and then you come crashing down. I ended up in hospital, and then I found out also when the depression set in, because when you've been on a big high, you come on a low. I found out that my ex, who I'd split up with from just under a year prior to that, had killed himself. So that was quite a mad low, and I spent the whole of 96 pretty much depressed and zombified.
Right, yeah, I grew up I'm here in London, in West London, at Ladbroke Grove. So I grew up, went to a normal primary school, but then I did go to boarding school for secondary school, so that's a little bit, a little bit different. So I just followed the traditional path for most people at that school. So then I went to university for 4 years, and then after 1 year of unemployment, then I got my first job. It was never a high-paying job. It was always quite a low-paying job. And so after a few years, I'm thinking like, I've got to do something about this. And I'm just always online. I'm on Google. I'm looking for ideas, jobs, something just to get some more money, just to improve the situation.
Alright, I was born in a small town in Italy called Asti, and I just lived there and up to the age of 19. Then I just felt the impulse. I got the opportunity to travel to Spain, to the Canary Islands, and I lived there for like 7 months. Then I went back to Italy for a little while as my parents opened a business, and I was part of it. And I just decided to travel again and just came to London when I was 21. I was all messed up in my head because I had to follow the rules, and I couldn't follow the rules because I just had the instinct that I had to do something different. I love to travel, and the town where I come from is really small, and I felt like I didn't fit in, but it was just I had to do something different. And maybe even though my mom would be upset about this, get away from my family because they were a little bit too much on my case.
Well, I was born in Bishop Auckland, County Durham. I was the eldest of 5 altogether, but the 5th one only came when I'd already moved away. I had a good childhood. We didn't have a lot of money, but I had a fun time. It was nice having brothers and sisters. I was quite a jealous child, so we moved about quite a lot. That affected my schooling, so when I left school, didn't have many qualifications. And then I had my first daughter quite young. I was about 18 when I had my daughter, and I had another daughter, so I got 2 daughters. And then I met somebody and we moved to Cornwall. So I spent 6 years in Cornwall, and that was fantastic. I think it was one of the loveliest places for my 2 kids to grow up. And I loved it. I loved living there, I loved being by the beach. I love that lifestyle. And then my relationship broke down, and I hit a really, really hard time at that point. I just didn't know whether I was coming or going. I didn't know what I'd done wrong for the relationship to break down so badly. And my children, by then, they were children, they were like teenagers.
My story, I came from a pretty poor family. We didn't have a lot, and there was a lot of what I guess I'd call contrast growing up. There was a lot of quite a lot of dysfunction in our family, and it's not that I grew up thinking I'm having a really hard childhood. It's only like in hindsight, looking back to the situation surrounding me when I grew up, that I actually realised there was quite a lot of difficulty for us. I was a very naughty kid. I got into a lot of trouble, especially around the time when my parents were divorcing. Always pulled up in front of the headmasters, always in detention, suspended a few times, finally expelled. By the time I got into my teenage years, I was messing around first with sniffing glue, then with harder drugs. By the time I moved out, I was living in squats. I became homeless by the time I was 18, and it was, now, at the time it was quite desperate, and I was very unhappy, and I was really like thinking, how do I get out of this? What can I find? There's got to be an escape to this lifestyle.